Okay, here's my project about a generative AI tutor for programming. It's a tutor that teaches MATLAB, which is a course that I'm doing at Chabot College. MATLAB is an engineering language for programming, and it could be used as a smarter calculator for approaching math problems. We're going through how this will be used in a learning environment and how it's an emerging technology. So the contents are first learning theories about an AI tutor, and then the affordances for the tutor, then the instructional fit, how it's a good fit for the classroom, and then the learner feedback, how the learner actually used this tutor in the classroom. Why make ChatGPT as a generative AI tutor for learning MATLAB? MATLAB is a common language. It's also noted that generative AI tutors have less of a problem teaching programming. There's less errors. In general, it's used in computer science courses or in industry. So there was a study in 2023 about how AI had positive implications for understanding learning and creativity perspectives. And in industry, software engineering in particular has been using AI for improving productivity in daily tasks. For making an AI tutor in MATLAB, I thought about how to align it to the course and how it can be useful for the student. By aligning it to the course, I had to first think about the learning objective of the course. I used a chatbot to help guide the learning objective, and that informed how I would make a tutor. And secondly, to make it useful for the student, they have to be able to access it, and they should be able to use it in multiple ways. To make the chatbot, I first had to host the chatbot on ChatGPT Plus. So there's a monthly subscription to be able to create chatbots and share it publicly. The purpose was to make it accessible and have a broad reach. Secondly, I had to ask AI for prompt ideas. The workflow was to use another AI model such as Claude to create a learning objective and also use the technology affordance partner chatbot by Dr. Beatty to help guide prompting for the learning objective. Next, I reversed engineered a tutor. So I took the My Learning Helper chatbot and I also looked at typical constructivist learning techniques and used that to inform how the tutor would approach the student. And lastly, I fed in extra information such as my curriculum. There's also a curriculum called Zybooks that's used for teaching MATLAB, which I fed into the chatbot and other typical questions so that the AI could be trained to understand the coding difficulty that students are going to start asking it. So the learning objective changed. My original learning objective was to just have students learn how to use MATLAB to approach problem solving and math problems. But after using the affordance chatbot, it asked me questions about learner agency and how they would approach a problem in the first place. So my revised learning objective says, by the end of this course, Engineering 25 students will be able to design programs using MATLAB to model complex mathematical systems and explore and visualize behavior. Some of the features of this chatbot are a think aloud protocol. So when AI generation is used to purely generate code without additional learning, it leads to less independent thinking, according to this study where they used AI and studied it with junior engineers, junior software engineers in practice. I'll explain more about that study. The next part is MATLAB syntax. So this AI bot taught examples of MATLAB code and syntax related to the problem. It understands the documentation of MATLAB and has very little error in describing how to program something. It's also easy to check if the program has an error because it will not run if it doesn't. Scaffolded support without upfront code. So AI can make scaffolded support and it will teach the user how to approach a problem. Here's an example. It will prompt the user to think about the problem instead of giving the general code. Zybooks is the curriculum, so there's a list of topics that this AI bot is familiar with, so it's more tailored to the course. On the right side is a typical question, and I'll do a live demo of how that would look. Part two is exploring affordances. So this MATLAB tutor has been used to support in three ways. One, with the teacher and the learner. Two, with the learner talking to another in a group discussion. And three, the asynchronous learner who doesn't have access to another person or the teacher. This one was created by Notebook LM. This slide shows that broken down into three modalities: teacher support, pair programming, and asynchronous or a high flex environment. Pair programming specifically, it's used to model how two humans would help each other to learn how to code. One person is a navigator and one person is a driver. This is significant in a constructivist learning theory, where there is a guided method to going through a technical problem. The chatbot can act as one of those people, and it also can happen in an accidental learner situation in HyFlex. So instead of two people going through a think aloud protocol, one person can go through the AI chatbot with a think aloud protocol. In general, how do learners use this for programming? Um, they could either use code, like AI to generate the code. They could use AI to generate some code and get explanations alongside it, or they could use AI to query just the concepts and the pseudocode only. This study on the right shows that when people, especially junior software engineers, didn't rely on AI code, they scored higher on a comprehension quiz. If they did rely on AI code, they scored lower. This shows that summary of how people use AI according to the study. The completion time increased if they did use iterative AI, especially to generate the code by itself, but the quiz score was at its lowest. There is some friction and the quiz score is at its highest, it's when there's AI and some AI generation of code and some comprehension or explanation of the concepts. So in general, to approach a MATLAB problem, the students have to first identify the programming approach, then model the situation using math and pseudocode, and then design the program in MATLAB. Here's a sample problem, and we'll try this using the ChatGPT bot. This one is a cylindrical tank optimization problem. So you're supposed to figure out some way to optimize a cylindrical tank. So here, there is that problem copied and pasted into the actual MATLAB tutor. And the student is supposed to figure out this problem. It says optimize this problem by determining the optimal radius. So with the chatbot, you can just plug in that problem. The bot says, what do you think the first step should be? Writing the volume constraint, etc. So instead of telling you the solution, it gets you through a problem-solving process. And Notebook LM summarized that where instead of giving you the code, if you go through friction, you increase your learning. Lastly, why is it a good instructional fit? When you have synchronous and asynchronous learning, there's more opportunities for using this chatbot. And this summary by Notebook LM says restoring learner agency. So that means instead of getting the code by itself, you're practicing implied modeling and discovering the process. On the left side, it shows, again, the questions that ChatGPT says. One example of a learner using this, they used a MATLAB, uh, they used a MATLAB quiz and used this bot to solve a quiz question. And the student's response after using the bot, she said, "This AI was very helpful. It didn't directly show me the answer and made me think. It's an actual resource, good resource in schools. Mainstream ChatGPT slash Claude is not as good." And to summarize the pricing and the access, you'll need to get the ChatGPT Pro. If you use the AI institutional license like ChatGPT provides for San Francisco State, you're kind of locked into that institution. So in conclusion, generative AI is useful for multiple modalities, guided discussions rather than generating code, and it supports learner agency and it's accessible through multiple modes such as solo and group discussions.